You've got your paper ticket in your hand. You're sitting in one of those aggressively uncomfortable, hard plastic chairs.
Oh, the worst chairs imaginable.
Right. And you were just watching this digital display board slowly tick up. It is the universal nightmare of government bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
Just long queues, stretched staff, and paperwork that honestly seems to multiply the longer you stare at it.
Yeah, it really does.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We're talking about the silver bullet that governments around the world think will kill that waiting room forever, which is artificial intelligence.
Exactly. They want to automate the front door,
Yeah.
process claims instantly.
Make it so you never have to take a Tuesday morning off work just to stand in a physical line again.
Which sounds great on paper.
It does. But we're looking at some fascinating source material today from Johan Steyn. He wrote this piece called AI in Public Services: Faster Delivery or Faster Exclusion.
And it is a crucial question.
It really is, because our mission today is to unpack this central paradox. Like, is AI actually going to fix these frustrating backlogs, or is it just going to build this invisible automated wall that locks the most vulnerable people out entirely?
Right, because applying AI in this context,
Yeah.
it isn't just a standard software upgrade.
No.
If a government rolls out a new operating system for their internal staff and it has bugs, well, that's an annoyance.
Sure, IT gets a bunch of tickets.
Exactly. But if a government rolls out an AI triage system for public benefits and it has systemic blind spots, that is a fundamental human rights issue. We are talking about how justice, access, and citizenship are actually going to operate in the modern world.
So let's start with the motivation here. Before we even critique it, we have to understand why governments are just so desperate to use these tools.
The pressure is enormous.
It is. I mean, NGOs, local municipalities, they're all under this immense directive to basically do more with less.
Always. Shrinking budgets, growing populations.
Right. And the backlogs for service delivery, whether we're talking about housing grants, visa processing, or, healthcare access, they feel entirely permanent.
Yeah, so if you're an administrator staring down a 5-year backlog, the promises of AI look incredibly tempting.
I imagine so.
I mean, the faster delivery argument's a very real thing.
Yeah.
The ability to have a system running 24/7, instantly routing cases, reducing the friction of basic administrative queries.
Cutting down on manual fraud detection, too.
Yes, exactly. That is a massive operational leap. But Steyn highlights this profound exclusion risk that is just baked into this rapid adoption.
Because of who it's built for.
Precisely. By their very nature, the AI tools currently being deployed are optimized for the ideal user.
Okay, so let's define that. The ideal user being someone who has a stable broadband connection, right?
Stable broadband, a modern smartphone.
High proficiency in written English, probably.
Yes, and a really strong baseline confidence in navigating self-service digital platforms.
Right. And Steyn points out that this profile is absolutely not the median South African citizen.
Not at all.
Nor is it the median citizen in vast swaths of the globe. You're basically building a high-speed lane for people who already have the fastest cars.
That's a great way to put it. And when governments deploy these systems without really accounting for the non-ideal user, the physical queue doesn't actually disappear.
It just changes shape.
Exactly. The wait time doesn't vanish. It just shifts from a physical line of people standing in a brick-and-mortar building into this invisible digital layer.
Which kind of reminds me of, those high-tech self-checkout lanes at grocery stores?
Oh, yeah.
Like, when everything works, it is fantastic. You bypass the line, you don't talk to anyone, you're out in 2 minutes.
It's seamless.
But the second a barcode won't scan, or the scale throws one of those unexpected item in bagging area errors,
The machine completely locks up.
it locks up. And if there's no human attendant around to override it, you are completely stuck.
Right. But in this case, you aren't leaving a box of cereal behind because the scanner broke.
No.
You are abandoning your application for fundamental health care or a critical housing subsidy. The stakes are completely different.
So why does that lockup actually happen in the digital queue?
Well, the mechanics of that invisible queue are tied directly to the digital divide. When a system architecture implicitly assumes you possess a smartphone and perfect written English, your lack of those things becomes a silent barrier to entry.
It's not like the system is actively rejecting them, right?
Exactly. The system doesn't generate a formal rejection letter. It doesn't explicitly tell you no.
So what does it do?
The UI simply times out. Or the chatbot enters this endless loop. Or the page just fails to load on a 3G connection.
Wow.
The architecture itself basically ensures you cannot get to yes.
Yeah.
You are still in the queue, but society can no longer see you waiting.
That is such a chilling thought. Which really brings us to how governments are actually trying to implement this tech on the back end. Because South Africa recently issued a stark warning about exactly how not to handle this transition.
Yes, the January 2026 Public Sector Issue Brief.
Right, from their Department of Communications and Digital Technologies and the Digital Economy Working Group's AI Task Force.
It's a very important document.
And they specifically called out this danger of what they called scattered deployments.
Because the task force stressed that public service AI simply cannot exist in a vacuum. It requires highly coordinated approaches, deliberate capacity building.
Right.
An AI tool deployed by a local municipality must connect seamlessly to national identity systems, centralized case management platforms, historical records, all of that.
And existing legal frameworks, I assume.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If it doesn't connect to all those things, the deployment just fails.
Okay, but wait. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go ahead.
If you look at the private tech sector, things like microservices, decentralization, rapid, agile iteration that is the gold standard.
Right, in the private sector, yes.
Tech companies actively avoid monolithic, top-down, centralized systems because they just move too slowly.
Right.
So why is it that when a local government department buys a nimble, localized AI tool to experiment and see what works best for their specific citizens, it's immediately labeled fragmentation and condemned to fail? Why do we need rigid central control?
It's a fair question, but it comes down to the fact that the underlying ecosystem of public service is fundamentally different from a private marketplace.
How so?
Well, in the private sector, if a decentralized app fails or it doesn't do what you want, the user simply uninstalls it. They move on.
True.
But in public service, the citizen's life is interconnected across multiple jurisdictions. Let's look at the actual mechanism of how this fails in government.
Okay, lay it out for me.
Imagine a local provincial office buys a slick, off-the-shelf AI triage tool for housing assistance. It works perfectly in isolation.
Yeah.
But to actually verify a citizen's income, that local AI tool needs to make an API call to the national tax database.
Right, which is probably running on a completely different 30-year-old legacy mainframe.
Exactly. The data schemas don't match, the API handshake fails, and the local AI tool just throws a generic error.
And the citizen just falls into the gap between those mismatched systems.
Precisely. If every province, municipality, or partnering NGO is out there procuring different tools from different vendors,
With different underlying rules and data structures.
yes, service delivery becomes wildly inconsistent. A citizen in province A might get their housing grant approved in 10 minutes through their local app,
Wow.
while a citizen with the exact same profile in province B gets completely locked out because their local AI instance just can't parse the national identity registry.
And beyond the technical failure, I mean, that creates a massive governance vacuum.
Oh, an absolute nightmare.
Because when a citizen's application disappears into the ether, what happens? The local department blames the software vendor.
Naturally.
The vendor claims their product works fine and blames the national database's API.
And then the national department blames the local office for buying unvetted software in the first place.
Right. The accountability completely evaporates. Everyone is pointing fingers.
Which is exactly why the OECD has been raising such massive red flags about this.
In their governing with AI reports.
Yes. They stress that poor transparency and skewed data architectures actively widen digital divides.
Mm-hmm.
The adoption of AI in government isn't just a new tool problem. It is fundamentally a capability and governance problem.
You can't just duct tape a cutting-edge generative AI interface onto a fractured analog bureaucracy and expect it to fix the underlying rot.
You really can. It just masks the problem.
So we've been looking a lot at the back-end plumbing, right? How these systems fail when they try to talk to each other.
Yeah.
But the real danger happens when that messy back-end is slapped with a sleek front-end interface that the citizen actually interacts with.
That's where it's the real world.
Exactly. And a great example of this is the UK. The UK's government digital service has been piloting gov.uk chat.
Right, as part of their modern digital roadmap.
Yeah, integrating AI to help users navigate government services. And Johan Steyn makes a really nuanced point here in the research. He says the issue isn't that chatbots are inherently bad,
Right. They can be very useful.
but in a government context, a chatbot inherently acts as a gatekeeper.
It is a literal gate.
Yeah.
If the AI hallucinates and confidently provides incorrect legal information, or if its training data contains subtle biases regarding how certain demographics phrase their questions,
The citizen is blocked.
completely blocked. Or even simpler, if the bot just isn't trained on the user's native language or local dialect, they cannot pass the gate.
And this triggers what might be the most alarming concept in this entire landscape, which is abandonment.
Abandonment is the silent crisis here.
Because think about it. If I'm on an e-commerce site and the customer service bot traps me in an endless loop,
You just close the tab.
I close the tab and I buy my shoes from a competitor. It's annoying, but the stakes are zero.
Exactly.
But you cannot exactly shop around for a different government, can you? Government is a monopoly.
And that monopoly is why the stakes of public sector AI are just infinitely higher. You are dealing with a captive user base that has nowhere else to go.
Right.
When a citizen gets frustrated by a poorly designed government AI and abandons the session, they aren't just logging off, they are abandoning their pursuit of essential grants.
They're giving up.
They are missing out on health services, educational support, physical safety protocols. The cost of abandonment is life-altering.
The UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, has been very vocal about this, haven't they?
Very vocal. They've warned that if governments do not proactively engineer these systems for inclusion, AI will systematically disadvantage already marginalized communities.
It takes the existing inequities of the digital divide and just hard codes them into the infrastructure of the state.
Exactly. And look at the fallout we are already seeing regarding public trust.
Oh, it's huge.
In the UK, the current debate around digital identity and public access shows how rapidly public skepticism metastasizes.
Right, because a government can frame an AI rollout purely as a matter of fairness and convenience.
They always do.
But the moment people feel excluded by an opaque system they don't understand, that operational frustration immediately morphs.
Into fears of surveillance, systemic bias, and institutional hostility.
Yeah. Trust evaporates, and once it's gone in a digital context, it is incredibly difficult to rebuild.
It's almost impossible to rebuild once the public decides the algorithm is against them.
Okay, so if scattered deployments create unaccountable technical debt, and these front-facing chatbots easily mutate into hostile gatekeepers that force vulnerable citizens to abandon their basic rights.
It's a bleak picture.
It is. So how do policymakers actually course correct? How do you build a system that clears the backlog without locking the door?
It requires a fundamental paradigm shift in how governments view technology procurement. Policymakers have to stop treating AI as an IT project. It must be treated as a justice and access issue.
I love that framing.
And the blueprint for doing this successfully relies on a framework called inclusion by design.
Inclusion by design. Which means accessibility isn't like a patchy release in version 2.0 after the public beta test.
No, absolutely not. It has to be the foundational architecture of the system from day one.
So what does that actually look like in practice?
The mechanical realities of inclusion by design are rigorous. It means mandating multilingual support natively.
Natively, right. Not just relying on a cheap browser translation plugin that misses all the context.
Exactly. And it requires engineering low bandwidth interfaces.
Let's talk about the mechanics of low bandwidth interfaces for a second, because I feel like that gets glossed over a lot in tech spaces.
It really does. People assume everyone has 5G.
Right. But low bandwidth means a government can't just build this bloated web app full of heavy JavaScript animations and high-resolution video tutorials.
No, it would never load.
The interface has to be hyper-optimized to load instantly on a cheap 5-year-old smartphone connected to a spotty 3G edge network.
Exactly.
It might even mean building robust USSD text-based options. You know, those menus you navigate with shortcodes on your phone that don't require internet data at all.
That is exactly what inclusion looks like. It also demands genuine offline alternatives for users who simply cannot interact digitally no matter what.
Because some people just won't be able to.
Right, and most crucially, it requires frictionless routes to human escalation.
That human escalation pathway is the safety valve.
It's the only way to catch the edge cases.
Yeah. If the AI cannot resolve the issue, the transition to a human caseworker has to be seamless.
Right, carrying over the context of the chat.
Exactly. So the citizen doesn't have to explain their trauma or their complicated problem all over again from scratch.
Which is exhausting.
It is. And if that human safety valve is hidden behind 10 nested menus to discourage people from using it, the system is just a trap.
And For government departments to actually build this, their operating models have to change entirely.
How so?
They need central standards for data sharing and privacy. They need strict, standardized audit logs across all municipal and national deployments.
To ensure quality assurance and prevent that fragmentation we talked about earlier.
Exactly, to maintain that accountability.
You know, Johan Steyn hits on a philosophy in this text that totally upends the standard Silicon Valley playbook.
The part about who you design for.
Yeah. He argues that service design should begin with the hardest to serve citizen, not the easiest.
It's completely counterintuitive for the tech world.
Right, because in private tech, you launch your MVP, your minimum viable product, by targeting early adopters.
You build for the tech-savvy users who will forgive the bugs.
Exactly. And then you slowly scale to the mainstream once you've ironed it out. But if a government applies that startup logic, they are intentionally using the most vulnerable people in society as the control group for exclusion.
That's a profound way to look at it. But designing for the hardest to serve first is an engineering philosophy that actually creates a vastly more resilient system for everyone.
It reminds me so much of the curb cut effect in urban planning.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. Like, decades ago, cities started cutting ramps into the sidewalks at intersections specifically to allow wheelchair users to cross the street.
Right, solving an access issue for a specific marginalized group.
Exactly. But once they were built, those ramps ended up helping the parent pushing a stroller, the delivery worker with a heavy handcart, the traveler rolling a suitcase.
Everyone benefits.
Designing for the marginalized edge case improved the core infrastructure for the entire population.
That is the perfect analog for inclusion by design in digital spaces.
Yeah.
Because when you force a development team to build an AI system that is highly legible, low bandwidth, and easily escalates to a human, you don't just help the marginalized user.
No, you make a better system.
You create a system that is faster and more reliable for the ideal user as well. Done right, AI really can be the tool that restores trust and drastically shortens those queues.
But done poorly, designed only for the ideal user, it just creates a silent, automated bureaucracy.
A wall.
And an algorithmic bureaucracy is much harder to appeal than a human one. I mean, you can plead your case to a tired clerk at a desk.
You can reason with them.
Right. You cannot plead your case to a 404 error page.
You really can't. And I think the journey through this research reveals a very stark operational choice for governments moving forward.
Yeah.
AI absolutely can be the shortcut to better public services, but only if administrators stop treating it like magic software that runs itself and start treating it as a heavy matter of civic justice.
It's a fundamental shift in perspective.
It is. The true measure of an advanced government tech stack isn't how blazingly fast it processes the tax return of a wealthy, tech-savvy citizen. The only metric of success that actually matters is whether the most vulnerable person in society can still navigate the system to get help when they desperately need it.
It all comes down to intentional design and back-end accountability.
Absolutely.
But, you know, it also leaves us with a really provocative question that stretches beyond Steyn's immediate warnings. And it's something you listening should mull over as you watch these systems roll out in your own city.
It's a scary thought experiment.
It is. Let's assume the absolute best-case scenario. Let's imagine governments actually listen to all this.
Okay.
They build a perfectly accessible AI interface, flawless low-bandwidth options, native multilingual support, a perfectly smooth human escalation pathway.
The digital door is wide open to everyone.
Exactly, the door is wide open. But what happens when the underlying machine learning algorithms, the models that are actually deciding who qualifies for a housing grant and who gets flagged for fraud, become so staggeringly complex that even the human policymakers who purchase the system no longer understand the mechanics of how the AI is arriving at its conclusions?
The black box problem applied to public policy.
Right. Because even if the digital door is wide open and fully accessible, are we truly comfortable walking into a room where no human being actually understands the rules?
If the queue is invisible, the decision maker shouldn't be.
Exactly. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the systems being built around us. We really hope this arms you with the technical and civic context you need to keep asking the hard questions.
Absolutely.
So next time you find yourself stuck in a frustrating queue, whether you are clutching a paper ticket in a physical waiting room or staring at an endlessly spinning loading wheel on a government portal, you'll know exactly the invisible mechanics working behind the scenes.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time.